welcome to Valley Strange. Today we're going to be talking about a book of the strange, and that is going to be the Mothman Prophecies that it was written by John Keel in 1975. Anybody heard or read this book prior to us doing it for this episode?
Definitely heard of, but it's for me, it was one of those dealios where maybe I'm kind of not on Richard Gere's nuts as John Keel is, but just seeing that kind of went,
There's a lot of people on Richard Gere's nuts.
looks dumb, just it felt like a dumb premise or whatever, and I was like, whatever. But encountered Mothman-esque stories and stuff, going into the strange in general, but never directly fucked with this stuff. And I'm glad and not glad I did, if that makes any sense, because, well, we'll get into it, I guess, but it's just, this book kind of goes all over the fucking place.
Yeah.
I mean, I just out of, I guess, morbid curiosity or whatever, but I sat down and tried to just log every instance of something strange that Keel brought up. I got to about page 45 and I was like, this is a fucking fruitless endeavor. Like, this is just.
Well, I know in my outline here, I suggested that we kind of count how many encounters there were, and at that point, I kind of just stopped too. I was like, I'm not going to just count every.
Yeah, because mostly I just rocked like, okay, here's an MIB reference, here's a UFO reference, here's a actual Mothman reference or whatever. But then he also gets into early in the book talking about like some ancient civilization stuff matters, topic stuff. And I was just like, where are you going with this, dude? Like,
Roland, any previous?
I mean, other than the popular media, no, not really. Never tried reading anything about it, and I have no idea who John Keel is before you guys mentioned him. I was mostly just interested to hear about it. Granted, there isn't, not that there's a whole, I don't think there's a whole lot. I imagine the backstory around the people doing the sightings and that are involved in the phenomenon are more interesting. Well, I guess, it would be more interesting than the Mothman itself kind of thing, but because I don't think it's real. So,
yeah, you don't
right
think it's real. That's that note of the bone sort of thing.
I was trying to find this image on Reddit I'd found not too long ago off of r/cool guides. I think I told you about it. I'm not sure, but somebody had drawn like a bunch of North American cryptids as far as, the ones they know about or I guess making it in that list. And
so you're admitting to their existence then.
I thought it was amusing. A lot of them were like, either short and hairy or tall and hairy or some combination of
seemingly duende-esque,
Yeah, exactly. Very duende-esque.
One thing I did kind of have a bit of comparison to, like whenever they described the Mothman, and which we'll get into what the Mothman is necessarily. One of the characteristics was a 6 to 8 foot figure,
correct,
with like a 10 foot wingspan. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that came to mind was 5 foot ball sack.
Yeah, there we go.
50-pound ball sack.
Ball sack wingspan.
I just
inflated.
It reminded me of Lechusa.
Well, I got reminded of what was it in the, I can't remember if it was in the 80s this happened, but there's the infamous NASA gargoyle in Houston. Where it's basically, just another big flying humanoid cryptid sort of story. And we'll delve into it a little bit deeper as far as just more cases of this, because it's,
it's
big flying creatures are ubiquitous almost when you start looking at just,
it's some
more
kind of
contemporary
bird or
folklore to even just stuff in the ancient past. I mean, just go back to looking at shit from Sumeria with some of their gods, they're winged beings. And
we talked about the cryptids episode. Well, the cryptids episode was couple months ago.
Yeah, our Texas Crypts episodes, talking about flying creatures.
That talked a lot about flying
Thunderbirds and
creatures.
shit. Yeah, which guess we're somewhat segueing into one of our talking points here as far as, the geographical and historical, I guess accounts of kind of Mothman
Accounts
figures.
and intersections.
Because one thing that I found really interesting is, particularly listening to the Art Bell episode you dug up, Ray, was there was that friend of John Keel's who was also a paranormal researcher who called in and noted how Mothman is just what John Keel called it, even though it's part of a bigger phenomenon of flying creatures. Like, and he likened it to, the Thunderbird.
There was I have it here in the book marked somewhere, but it wasn't necessarily John Keel, but someone called it the Mothman, but then he just kind of ran with it.
Oh, word. Okay.
So again, it's not necessarily one specific Mothman creature. There's like flying, unidentified. Well, one of the things this other book that I was reading, Inhumanoids, called them unidentified aerial humanoids. So
yeah,
UAIs, that's what they were called.
Oh,
and because
an actual designation. That's
throughout history, there are many flying creatures that people have seen.
Yep.
I mean, just go back to angels. Even though like biblical angels look fucking crazy. Like, have y'all ever seen the kind of the artist
the
representations of like, okay, this is what based on what the Bible has to say about what these guys look like. Like, they look fucking like
horrifying,
crazy. Like, if they had tentacles, they'd be Lovecraftian horrors.
Yeah,
like it's fucking cool. And but in relation to the Mothman, this is also from the Art Bell coverage, but where people have likened, Mothman to, they say like, oh, they're angels or whatever.
Yeah.
But what was hilarious during the whole episode, because it kept coming up and up so fucking often, where Art Bell's just like, if you got red eyes, it's not an angel. Like,
and because he had like he has like a fear of
he's freaked
eyes.
out by things with red eyes. Yeah. So like,
and he mentioned that a few times in that interview.
It just kept coming up and up, like, before the interview, like, because he, taking the calls and stuff, and people were like, "Oh, I'm really excited you're going to talk to John Keel about the Mothman." And
there was a part of me that regarding that interview of Art Bell really hammering the point that I don't know anything about Mothman. I was like, I was like, you're in this field. Are you going to fucking tell me at this point? I guess this was in the 90s. That you don't know
2002 is when that interview was
there
done.
You go. I'm like, you don't know anything about the Mothman? And he's like, I don't know anything about the Mothman.
Yeah, and it's really crazy how I've been doing this for years and years, been engaged in the paranormal, and Mothman's never come up. And it's like,
I'm just like,
okay.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, you should.
I think that was just his excuse for not reading the fucking book before interviewing.
Is this the book about that monster with red eyes? I ain't reading it.
Yeah, I ain't reading that because angels don't have red eyes.
No, it does. Raccoons. It's got rabies.
They have blue flamey eyes and stuff like that. But any other like characteristics of the Mothman, even according to the book and the way people describe this creature that they would see flying around, again, red eyes was always the thing.
Huge wingspan,
tall. But the one thing about this book that is somewhat fascinating, but also I'm not exactly sure why it's titled The Mothman Prophecies. I'm probably sure that's like necessarily to get people to actually read it, but it's majority UFO type of encounters. Yeah. And as well as like Men in Black.
So like I think that this would have been better titled like The Incidents at Point Pleasant or whatever.
Exactly,
It's like something to that, because really Mothman is a very small section of this, and the prophecy section is a very small bit of it, because the prophecies were more tied to just weird phenomenon going on rather than like Mothman being a part of it. It's like I really, like, particularly after getting through this book a few times, just did not understand why it was the Mothman Prophecies. It was just because,
I mean, it sounds cooler realistically, but
it sounds awesome, but there's so many fucking, books on the paranormal out there that have relatively boring fucking titles, but they're fascinating, but they're actually accurate to what's going on because there is a section of this book where there is a bit of like prophecy going on because apparently John Keel was getting weird calls that were doing predictions of like, MLK is going to get shot.
That's one thing I thought
the Pope is going to be, they're going to try to assassinate him.
I laughed a bit whenever he said that he was getting calls and that he had information that Martin Luther King was going to get killed. And I was just like, he's really putting his, whatever is going on in his life to like really critical status.
Yeah. And that's the point I definitely wanted to bring up in this episode. And I guess we'll do it. I'll just get into it now, but it's just funny how Keel always tries to play off that he's just this, kind of humble observer.
Yeah.
And he's not a hero, but then there's all this shit that he talks about, like in his investigations into Point Pleasant, where he's like, I grabbed my flashlight and went in alone, and even though I was terrified as shit, but I'm no hero.
Yeah. I'm just a total badass. That's all. A humble badass. Well, I put my pants on one leg at a time, one awesome leg at a time.
A lot of the things that he talks about in the book,
that's fucking funny.
They're pretty much accounts that someone else is telling him. So like, I guess they're considered firsthand accounts, but there's a point towards the end of the book where he finally he finally goes out and he said he goes like with a flashlight and with that other lady, I think Mary
Hire,
they go out and they're literally just standing there and they're like, well, do you see that? Are those what they might be? Like nothing really happens. They're just saying, I see something.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Well, and there's also like because it's this weird thing where it feels like, although he's trying to play off this humble observer, there's all this weird shit happening just to him,
Yeah.
But like all the weird phone calls and stuff, and how he goes and plays super phone line detector, like going through to look and see if any lines have been tampered with in his apartment building and shit. And he's like, it was a nest of wires, but I figured it out because I, the humble observer, not hero, mind you. But it's just weird because if you just totally suspend belief in his narrative, it's like these are the ramblings of like a paranoid schizophrenic. They're like receiving these weird phone calls or predicting crazy things or having phone calls that are and messages that show up that are supposed to be from like one person, but then you talk to that person and they're like, oh, I never called you or whatever.
Right.
It's just, so if you just take that, like, just go like, oh, this is absolute bullshit. And then go, maybe this guy has some sort of weird pathos going on. Like, it kind of like really puts a unique lens on this book. But
there's a lot of things in here where he kind of brushes over, which kind of makes a lot of the things that he's claiming. Well, I feel like he's not even necessarily claiming anything. Well, excuse me, like he's making claims, but he's putting some underlying thing where he's not necessarily taking accountability for what he's claiming.
Right.
Regarding the fact that like, well, yeah, maybe that like, someone called, but he wasn't too sure. But there was a situation where he mentions that there was a lot of underlying illness going on with certain people.
Yeah.
That had these experiences. But I don't really see him further going into that because I'm like, so there's some sort of like mental illness, tumor playing a role, and like in the fact that people are having these hallucinations. So to speak.
Or is it just like mass hysteria? He doesn't really get into that, and you would think with all the hours he logged, in the Point Pleasant area, and he talked about how he's got like in the Art Bell interview, he talked about hey he interviewed dozens upon dozens of people and has all this cool stuff, but then we just get a fraction of that in the Mothman Prophecies. And so I don't know if he was just trying to save space, and try to make it a tighter read, but it could have been a more fascinating read to go instead of just having, it's essentially, apart from his direct experiences along with Mary Hire and maybe some other folks, it would have been really cool to get more of the accounts that he encountered versus just the like 4 or 5, groups of folks that he talks about in this book.
Yeah.
Like the set of like 4 teenagers that were the initial, sighters of the Mothman and that kicked this whole thing off. because, and I wish he talked about this story in the book, but he talked about it with Art Bell because he was nearby. He talked about how he was nearby researching a story or whatever, but he didn't talk about what the story was, to my recollection in the book. But there was the catbird that was
Yeah. Well,
play.
I know he in the book he does mention that he was like
he was investigating somewhere else.
Yeah,
but
he just happened to show up like in this area, and all this stuff was happening, so he like stayed and started investigating.
yeah.
But it's funny because I was also I've been watching the movie too. I've watched it a few times because we are going to talk about that at some point.
Haven't
As
watched it
a
in a
Valley
long,
Strange
long
CineQuest
time.
crossover. I like how in here he kind of it just so happened that he comes across this town and all these things because he's investigating some weird ass cat bird shit. But in the movie, it's very dramatic how he ends up in Point Pleasant and stuff. Like it's almost like a divine thing. It's
Divine intervention.
Thing. Yeah, divine intervention. That's he's gravitating towards Point Pleasant.
He's being called down.
But again, we'll get into more detail whenever that does come across. But I just thought it's funny.
Oh, that's gonna be fucking hilarious.
Well, yeah, because you know how.
But again, not a hero.
We do,
right?
yes. Well, that's the thing. He talks about not being a hero, but in the movie, he'd be the hero.
He's not Jesus. He's Jesus' left hand.
But we could say it's Richard Gere. That's gonna have to like push that, like, because you can't just have Richard Gere just being somewhere. He has to do something. He has to be a man. He's fucking the officer and a gentleman, for fuck's sake. He's a fucking American gigolo. You can't just have him be there. So some of the background on John Keel, he apparently was a ufologist before all this.
Yeah, that was one thing. I didn't do my normal just kind of deep dive on into wikis and shit too much about like John Keel's background, but it's amazing. Like, it's truly amazing that he was like 14, 15 years old and he was already like submitting stories to various publications and shit. Some of them were just, generalist, paranormal papers, but he was also doing stuff like he was writing for Playboy and stuff. Like, it was actually like the reason that he got down to the Point Pleasant area is because he was writing for Playboy, and I guess old Hugh just took a cigar out of his mouth for a second and was like, all right, John, I need you to get down to the bottom of this UFO nonsense.
And I guess during that interview, Art Bell's like, "Oh, I guess you didn't solve that for Mr. Hughes."
Yeah, he's like, "No, I didn't solve the mystery." And it's like Art Bell, for all the great he did, like, why were you sitting there trolling this guy?
Yeah,
that you're sitting there just going like, "Well, I don't know why we've never talked," and then you go and give him shit. Like, it's just fucking funny.
Well, it's because he doesn't know anything about Mothman.
I know. Just in all of his years of the paranormal. Oh no.
So I feel that kind of plays into this whole book and how he approached it, because I felt that maybe he just had some UFO information that he just needed to put in there. So like that again, that fills up a lot of this book, UFO stuff.
Because really, it's Men in Black and weird aerial lights to UFO activity that is like the main thrust of this book, where the sightings of this, Mothman dude are a very small part.
Right.
And I don't know in subsequent books that he wrote, because he was a pretty prolific writer to my understanding, if he ever kind of got there to more fully flesh out the Mothman angle of the phenomenon of the paranormal writ large.
Right.
Because it came out in the Art Bell article, and a little bit in here, but then also I've read some Jacques Vallée, so like that's informing my just kind of summarization of it a little bit. But where all of these, UFO and paranormal ghosts, just all that shit, it's all interrelated in the mind of John Keel as of 2002. But I just don't know if he got there in writing, because he did talk about, in other books that were also brought up in this interview, about how he got into the concept of windows, basically into the other realm where the spooky wookie comes out,
right?
And UFOs, ghosts, all that shit's a part of it. But but to my understanding from the description, it's like kind of like if the window is just cracked, then you get like UFO stuff. But when the window gets like really opened up, that's when you start getting, all the cryptids and shit, and there's super high degrees of high strangeness going on in places. Um,
Again, all just theoretical. Yeah.
oh yeah, absolutely. And
Did he mention to conduct a map of ley lines while he was at it? Just asking for a friend.
He didn't mention
Asking for a
it.
friend.
but I really don't know how. At the
magnetic
time of
disturbances
the
above.
writing of this book, I'm not sure how big ley lines were, because it feels to me, I may be incorrect because I've only read so much of the investigating the paranormal activity and the relation to ley lines, but it feels like that was a relatively recent.
I thought that had to do with Eric von Doniken's Chariots of the Gods, but I don't remember when that was published though.
I think it was 68 or something like that. I mean, I've got a copy on the shelf somewhere. Could look it up, but that sounds like a lot of effort.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, a lot of these books came out around the same time. I don't know if
magnetic
he
disturbances.
kind of made any kind of connections to something like
solar
that
winds
with whatever the Mothman, whatever's going on in Point Pleasant, because he was investigating for 13 months.
Yeah,
until like the eventual event that he kind of connected all these things to was the collapsing of the Silver Bridge.
Yeah, because that was another one of the quote unquote Mothman prophecies that he got, that something bad was going to happen on the Ohio River.
And
omen.
Well, all these like winged creatures in history have kind of been what they've called the harbingers of doom.
Yeah,
they're pretty much like bringing
the banshee,
bad news to people that whoever like witnessed them, So I wasn't exactly sure what the connection was between the time it started to the time it ended, because I know in the book he does mention that people saw a Mothman kind of around the area. Some people did see it before it collapsed.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly why people were seeing it up until that point, because apparently between the first sighting and the last, the event of the bridge collapse, the sightings of the Mothman just stopped in Point Pleasant.
Yeah. But then you also had some other, suspicious things that were going on, particularly with all the MIB activity.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the account from some lady who lived near the Silver Bridge, who apparently saw men in flannel coats and
their checkered jackets, like climbing up on the.
Yeah, but they weren't wearing boots. They were apparently wearing fucking Oxfords.
And it's funny that thought that was interesting that she could just see whatever they were wearing. I don't know how far she was necessarily, but she said that they were climbing all over the bridge or something.
But I would assume that even if her view wasn't that great, because the description was, I saw a couple guys in flannel coats, but the shoes popped out, so she couldn't have been too far away.
Right.
But they weren't wearing boots. Mm-hmm. And, John Keel was talking to Art Bell about how kind of like back in the day, the FBI kind of had a uniform that they wore.
Yeah.
And so they would just stick out like a sore thumb, because like all of the men in the area, the TNT area, wore boots. And so I guess it's not so shocking to think that, even from a distance, you can go, wait, it's a
pair of Red Wings.
Those are dress shoes. What the fuck? Like that's weird. And why that would stick in someone's mind. Because it's one of those definite signs of you ain't run from around here, is you?
Yeah.
Like,
well, some of the ways that John Keel talks about certain characters that they see or I guess the accounts of people talking to him about how they saw certain people they have certain like characteristics about him.
Yes.
And he would say like they had like black skin, but they weren't Negroid.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and at some point, like
they had Angloid features.
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the features that one of these people were accounting was that they had the black skin and they had pointy nose and like a pointy chin. So I was like, I know at the time, like that's just the way they kind of describe certain things. But I was I was just thinking about it on the way over here. I was like, where does like West Virginia stand in like most racist states in America?
Let me just really quick. Top 10 most racist.
Number 1, West Virginia. Striking, actually, Point Pleasant.
Shit.
So I mean, as far as like other characteristics of like the Mothman and stuff, do you know anything else about this character role?
Nope. I pretty much have always understood him. Like the way I've looked at the Mothman is that it sort of represents like the generalized template for humanoid sort of winged cryptids in North America.
You know, surprisingly, that it's more recent that the Mothman characterized as it is. But like I said before, throughout history and throughout every culture, they all have some sort of
I would
winged
go
creature.
so far to even say like it's more generalized than the standard definition or whatever. It always has the red eyes and the wings. Because I mean, I've seen some with red red accounts descriptions of winged humanoids, you know, with the yellow eyes or that have like the gray shaped, you know, faces, as in, you know, alien grays. And
yeah, but what's interesting though is that
sometimes they got bat wings, sometimes they got
particularly comes with Mothman, it's
they're always
faces are not
tall.
really ever described because
you never see them. It's always
the piercing red eyes
right.
thing, you know, which is fine, but but you know, there's like the account of the dude who was allegedly picked up and carried for like 10 feet by a Mothman-like creature, but I don't know if that was at night or during the day or whatever. But
right.
we never
get a good glimpse of that.
Yeah,
I mean, I would assume at night. That's when I kind of say that.
I think
at dusk.
I think most of them happen around the evening.
Yeah,
and
it's not around sunset.
A lot of the accounts that
late night
that are recorded in this book end with someone seeing it. Either they're being chased in a car or chased in some way, and then at some point it just shoots straight up, and disappears. And that sounds very much like the Jeepers Creepers monster to me, like we talked about in our cryptids episode, like the flying humanoids in Houston and all that kind of stuff. So the one thing he does mention is that like after this incident, the sightings pretty much stopped in Point Pleasant, but obviously the quote unquote Mothman has been seen throughout the rest of the world. But at least that's the way they categorize him now, as opposed to like whatever the culture is at that particular time, and they categorize it however they, from their own perspective and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then thinking of the flying creatures stuff, the daytime accounts, they'll generally describe it as like a fucking pterodactyl. Which, I mean, who knows? I mean, like, it's
our best guess of what a pterodactyl is. You know,
well, I mean, we got bones and stuff, and go like, okay, it kind of looks like that. You know,
no feathers, unlike some of the newer ideas that they might have had feathers. That's that kind of stuff. That's, I don't know.
But anyway, I guess back to this fucking book.
So we did talk about the fact that the main event that occurs in this book is the bridge collapse. Afterwards, they found that there was like pretty much, it was like the metal was
there was I read into this, but it's been a while, so details are a little fuzzy, but there was some critical piece of the bridge that became unstable that unless you, or at least according to the shit I read, unless you actually send some like bridge engineers in there to inspect it like thoroughly, it's not something you could just see, you know, from a profile shot of the bridge or whatever. Like it would have needed some detailed surveying to find this weak point,
or maybe some consistent maintenance.
What exactly was it that caused the bridge?
Well, bridges in the United States are like, it's just we build them and then wait for them to collapse, and then we'll fucking fix it. So like,
what was it that caused this bridge to collapse? I don't remember.
No, there was
it was like some kind of faulty thing.
There was a fault in the bridge that, unless it was like actually like really looked at from, I had to like get into like the workings of the bridge somewhere. I can't remember exactly.
But the thing is that it was the traffic that was on there was like heavy traffic for, I guess, because close to Christmas times.
Yeah, because the bridge collapse was December 15th.
Yeah, so like there's like heavy traffic going from one place to the other, and it wasn't meant to hold that much weight on it, allegedly. So that's why it collapsed, and 46 people died.
I thought it was 47, but yeah,
46, 47, something like that.
Yeah,
people died. I wish I have like
close enough.
A George Costanza button. That's no tragedy.
And it's interesting though, because getting back to the quote unquote prophecies end of the or angle of the book, Mary Hyre, who was I can't remember exactly what she did. Like
I think she was like the reporter also.
What's up?
I think she was a reporter also.
Yeah, I think she was like a reporter for the local paper or whatever the fuck. But evidently she had a dream, which once again, more info on the interview process and actual investigations of this phenomenon that could have made this book about twice as thick, but it would have been more satisfying to make these links. But, you know, Keel reports that Mary had dreams of, you know, Christmas packages like floating in the Ohio River.
Yeah, it's true.
But that apparently haunted her, but it's not really clear when exactly this happened to my recollection, you know, because that just sounds like something kind of fun just to throw in, like, oh, yeah, I had this dream, and you know,
prophecy. Let's put that in there.
Yeah,
what? This chick's crazy.
But when was this? When was this dream? Was this dream actually something that occurred beforehand that would tie into a prophetic vision, or is this a kind of like almost a PTSD thing where, you know,
she's having it because of
where not that she's necessarily having the dreams afterwards, but she had a dream about a river that something else happened or whatever, but just, you know, filling in the gaps of like real life versus dream logic. It was like, oh yeah, it must have been like that dream about this, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can only assume that John Keel is being forthright with the way he's writing these things, because I mean, all that shit could have been added in later for effect, you know? There were some instances that I thought there's a character in here called Injured Cold.
Yes.
And that person or that people have had encounters and phone calls and all these kinds of things with this person where like they've even taken him up in a spaceship. And there was a point where someone's like recounting them going on a spaceship, but they said it was like really I want to say got basic. Like it was just, there wasn't anything spectacular about this spaceship that they went on.
Well, yeah, and then, you know, they get to the planet or whatever, and
there's like nude people there.
Yeah, nude people, and it's like hyper civilized, and it's like, which I just go, okay, we're right in the, I guess, the waning heyday of the hippie movements.
Yeah.
And how does that play into the interpretation of this, you know, alleged UFO travel experience?
See, I was just thinking that maybe some hippie gave this guy LSD. They got on the bus and then drove to like a nudist colony and
just got there.
Because I mean,
we're chilling.
LSD was big at the time too, so I mean, maybe he got slipped something and went on a little trip and thought he was in a UFO or something.
Yeah, or it was part of a CIA op, because I mean, like,
well, the MIB are all there too, so I mean, like. Oh, there's all these like figures that are coming through, and they're all very suspicious. Like, who knows what they were?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I can't remember when MK Ultra closed, but I'm sure there's been plenty of projects along there. But during the MK Ultra days, I mean, you had CIA operatives that were basically dosing people with LSD and shit, like at like social gatherings and stuff, just see what would happen. Like, it's fucking wild and
good times.
Yeah, right. So I think those are called employee perks.
Well, I mean, there's a guy that
benefits
killed himself over these experiments because he was basically getting dosed without his knowledge, and he was like losing his mind.
Too much of a good thing. That's a tragic.
But the CIA, I guess we'll get to further in some future iteration of this show, but is
we know what you did. Right.
Did, done, doing currently.
Yeah, there we go.
But anyways, I'm just going through some of the points here that we were going to talk about this book. So Oh, the one thing, was there anyone attacked? I'm trying to remember in this book. Was there anyone attacked or injured by an encounter with the Mothman? I think that's a
No.
no, right? Yeah.
That's no. Yeah, the closest thing to an attack or whatever, and it didn't even happen in the Point Pleasant area, but it was
Was it the guy that got picked
so the
up?
guy got
Was,
picked up or whatever. Yeah, but that
I was
was
gonna be like,
someplace else. But from my recollection and so forth, which is probably trash. I don't remember anyone. I remember people getting spooked out of
Right.
their wits.
But see, that's the thing, is that like most of these accounts are just people getting spooked. And
Right.
I've made comments about this whenever talking about like people who've seen like the Lechusa
Mhm.
or a duende or something. It's just them getting spooked. Like they've never really attacked them specifically, or has their lives haven't
They
been
just
in
see
critical
they
danger.
just see it immediately. Get him!
Yeah,
Jump on him or
like
some shit.
I.
Fucking doing it. Turn on the lights.
So that's where like any of these accounts where someone's had like a specific direct encounter with them, they're pretty much zero.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's the
you
way
also
I
have to
see
you
it.
have to base all these accounts just on someone's perception on something, and
Uh-huh.
that is always kind of like sketchy.
Yep.
And then with most cryptids, it's a dealio of like most people are getting just spooked. There's a few instances where people claim they've been like captured by Bigfoot or whatever,
Yeah.
or taken into a fairy mound and had lost time or whatever. But aliens are really the only ones that have like violence in mind, even though it's medical experiments or whatever, or just taking samples or whatever.
Right.
But that's where it seems to be the damage. Oh, I guess thinking about after massive cryptid sightings or whatever, there are folks that reported basically like the conjunctivitis and like the kind of like the sunburns and shit after
Mhm.
witnessing some of these lights or the Mothman or whatever.
The one thing John Keel does, I don't recall if it's in the book or else I did hear him say it on the Art Bell interview, was that the Mothman he considers like ultra dimensional.
Yeah, which I
kinda
don't believe he
new.
got into in this book. But I think it's just something he kind of decided on later at some point and just kind of just went, oh, that's what I've always thought.
What was that phrase? It sort of reminds me of. It sounds like was it ultra terrestrial or ultra? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
think
ultra terrestrials. Yeah.
that's what I was
Yeah,
trying to think of. It's not.
no, that's like
It's a different
they're pretty much
characterization for
we're all existing
extra
on the
and
same plane, but in different
right,
frequencies or
Yes.
something.
right. So
Okay.
yeah, the energy levels.
Which brings us back to David Icke talking about the fourth dimension or whatever.
And Tom DeLonge.
That's right.
Oh yeah, now Tom DeLonge's on that train.
we
That's all I
have the
forgot.
Bigfoot gray
God.
connection. That's right. It's all coming together, folks. Thanks to Blink 182.
Since Roland, you didn't read it necessarily, but I mean, there's plenty of information about the Mothman, or not even really that
Yeah,
much, but there's
well,
information about the
it's
Mothman on the
more of
internet.
the same stuff. It's
I said it wasn't necessarily required to read because all this book really is just a bunch of
these
different
are-
accounts
exactly.
about people seeing the Mothman.
And then
I
on the
mean-
internet, it's just more of the same. Only it's internet and social media firsthand accounts. So at least
Yeah.
this is a book.
Do you think there's anything? Oh, well, I guess Daniel, was there anything that you have maybe learned from this book that you didn't know before, or that
Other than
maybe
just
something that's
like
like,
other than just
surprising
like
to you?
detail specifics.
I'm gonna go off and say like no for myself because I feel like I've been inundated with this kind of information
Sure.
pretty much since I was a kid, like trying to figure, even watching the movie too. Like
Yeah.
you go online, even go to the library and stuff like that. You can find some certain things, but I don't think there was anything new that I grasped from this book. Other than I will say it was an entertaining read, personally.
No, highly entertaining. But as far as new information, not really. But it was neat to see, or a few more cases in point of like MIB interactions with the public. Like that was pretty interesting. But it would have been once again cool if he just brought in more, and maybe he thought it'd be fucking boring or whatever the fuck. Don't know his motivations, but it'd have been cool to see okay, you have, these 5 or 6 cases of like MIB interactions in the Point Pleasant area, but were there more?
Right.
Even just stuff where not even having direct interactions, but just going like people just looking, seeing a weird car driving down the street, and these guys getting out and walking to the diner to go fuck with somebody or somebody's house. Like just flesh that out more because it's always all right, we had this MIB interaction and here's how they behaved. But it'd been cool to see more of a outsider perspective of like, because as John Keel brought up his interview with Art Bell about how FBI men stuck out like sore thumbs.
Right.
Well, bring that up in relation to MIB in this book because it's a small town. Everyone's fucking talking to each other. Like there has to be more eyes out there that saw these weird dudes.
I would agree with most of what you're saying there. Just in that, yeah. But if I was going to throw a nice thick butt in there, it seems to be the same associations they have with other cryptids. Like you would think you've had more information about Sasquatch or any of those others, I figure, but there isn't necessarily.
I think with cryptids like that, it's a bit different because usually the sightings are isolated.
Okay.
Yeah. Like you're out in the woods or whatever on a camping trip with a few buddies or whatever. Like that's when this shit gets brought up. But in this town where everyone knows everybody, and they're a bunch of bored fucking miners and farmers, you'd think that, your neighbor, quarter mile away or whatever, saw a weird vehicle show up around the time that you say this happened.
Yeah.
To validate that it actually fucking happened.
Right.
Like,
no, absolutely.
You think the fact that they were in the same town as like an old TNT was a factory?
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not the MIB showed up or this Mothman too? Because I know that there was a lot of sightings. There was a lot of sightings around that TNT factory or whatever. But I don't think it in the book that it was necessarily played a bigger part as far as everyone's sighting.
Yeah.
Are there chemicals in TNT that would have caused some kind of like hallucinations?
Oh, maybe if they were huffing.
I really don't know.
Then another thing that got me a little bit excited was when it came to the aerial phenomenon that were going on with the lights and stuff. Where Keel's talking about, there seems to be an intelligence to them. Like I flicked my flashlight 3 times at them, and then we'll get 3 blinks back or whatever.
Oh, right. Okay.
But when he was talking to Art Bell, how once again there were a shitload of people who allegedly saw these lights, but then we hear about so few of these accounts, mostly from his perspective, or his experiences in this book.
They're all scared to come forward. They know that snitches get stitches.
Well, no, it's not that they're scared to come forward. Like John Keel said, he has just dozens of fucking eyewitness accounts.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, of this one particular phenomenon of lights on the river and in the hillsides and stuff, but so little of that actually just trickles into this book. And
okay, so
once again, is it am I a hero that's not admitting that I'm the hero of this story?
A hack who's
well, there was another book that the book that he came out after. The book that he published after the Mothman Prophecies was The Eighth Tower, which is one I've heard about as well.
Fuck, I've wanted to read that, though.
And I've been wanting to get my hands on that to see what... I don't know much about it, but I think maybe he continues on with this kind of
so this isn't his only narrative involving the Mothman Prophecies?
I mean, let me just go down the list here of like some of the books he has.
I think he wrote like 20, 30 books, some shit like that.
Yeah, he's got a shit ton. So let me just read off a few names here. Operation Trojan Horse, which he was reprinted as Why UFOs. Strange Creatures from Time and Space in 1970. The Complete Guide to Mysterious Beings. Our Haunted Planet. The Flying Saucer Subculture.
Wow.
1973. The Mothman Prophecies 1975, which is probably his biggest and most well-known. The Eighth Tower, which was also published in 1975.
And I'd say that, just from the bit of scouring the internet and stuff and looking up like folks that are talking about John Keel's work, the Eighth Tower, I think, is about as cited as an important work as Mothman Prophecies. So
no, pretty much every book after this, or even a little bit before that. I mean, the next one was called Disneyland of the Gods. What the fuck that means? And then you got
these names are pretty
Flying
interesting.
Saucer to the Center of Your Mind, The Outer Limits of the Twilight Zone, The Great Phonograph in the Sky, The Precious
You sound like
Precipient.
These are starting to sound like album cover names, right?
Well, yeah, they kind of do. And The Passionate Precipient, Illusions I Have Known and Loved. But yeah, those are like pretty much the books that he's done. The last one was in 2016. But I think that was just from like gathered writings because he died in 2009.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I thought,
but a lot of those were just like collections after the fact, because books of his were still coming out, 2013 to 2016. But those were just a bunch of like collections that he's had. I guess stuff that was unpublished.
Yeah, I was gonna. I was sort of
or
wondering
maybe also just collations of some of the articles he wrote back in the day when he was, writing for all these different.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like
stuff,
those like
actually,
articles and stuff. Yeah, which one might be?
It's
and I think that John Keel was sincere. I really do. I think it. But I just wonder sometimes though, because as sincere as he is, going back to the "I'm not a hero" thing, but then as he writes about his experiences in Point Pleasant, it's like,
I would say that him being a writer first, as he's trying to get these like gather all these accounts, there's got to be that writer in him that has to kind of like generate some kind of a narrative that is exciting and someone engaging to whoever's going to read it. Because I mean, if it's just the accounts, and I say this, if you're looking at the accounts of someone telling you the story, like I saw this thing, and that's all they tell you, what are you going to do? You got to like spice it up a bit. You can't just leave it as their own words, because most of those people are not storytellers. So you got to kind of embellish a little bit.
Double-headed, jet black, and breathe fire.
That's why you get like the
with
Mothman Prophecies, a true story, because probably it's true. Like these people had to have accounts. The Silver Bridge did collapse, and all these like sightings happened, and it was reported nationwide.
I mean, they find like things to tie it into real world events.
Actually, worldwide. Actually,
worldwide.
Like the Silver Bridge collapsing was big news at the time. But But then, as much as I like to think of John Keel being sincere and being like a avid, honest, fucking paranormal researcher, got to go back to old Bill Cooper, who called him a fucking CIA op. So then you think in that lens, is this,
it's a perfect cover.
Just a misinformation thing where it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pretend I'm making these big exposures of like MIB.
Because we have to remember,
from the grave, they're
Bill
still
Cooper
trying to make
the
money.
Only true.
He's a true patriot, man.
True patriot.
Yeah.
No,
like if you ever check him out, Roland, like his book is a mess, but there's some interesting shit in there. But the one thing that makes me laugh every time I think about Bill Cooper, because he has this, I'm a red, white, and blue blooded motherfucker, and I'm going to practice my Second Amendment. And, but he also has these moments of paranoia where he talks about like, how he and his, family would relocate somewhere, and even though they didn't have their address listed anywhere or whatever, there'd be like weird vans of businesses that didn't exist showing up, and like folks monitoring their property.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and he's like, well, I went out with my gun.
How do I still keep
and
getting
told
junk
them to get
mail?
off my land? Like,
Yeah, that's cool.
Never mind, I never paid my taxes.
Yeah.
Why do they keep on finding me?
Roland, I was gonna get you to read this if you could. It's basically a small article from Mary Hire from the Point Pleasant like newspaper and stuff like that. So it's a small article. It's just that right there. So you can give kind of like an accurate or like a realistic.
The winged red-eyed, right here in the middle.
Yeah, that
winged red-eyed thing chases point couples across countryside.
I think you need a transatlantic.
Maybe get some of that Southern Belle going.
No.
Transatlantic Southern Belle just sounds fucking
That sounds difficult. I don't know.
Does that actually exist?
Yeah, it might not. Winged, red-eyed thing chases point couples across countryside.
Yeah, you can sound like a fucking one of those old radio TV shows. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that for this whole article. All right.
It's very short.
Yeah, you're already half done.
Yeah, Point Pleasant correspondent. What stands 6 feet tall, has wings, 2 big red eyes, 6 inches apart, and glides along behind an auto at 100 miles an hour? Fuck if I know. No, yeah. Don't know. Well, neither do Point Pleasant residents, who were changed by a weird man-like thing Tuesday night. 2 young Mason County married couples today told of being chased by the strange creature around midnight Tuesday. Mr. and Mrs. Steve Mallette. That was a little too heavy. Actually, I was actually going into that. Nope. Keeping it 100 Atlantic. Transatlantic, whatever. 3540 just lead off. 3505 Jackson Avenue at Mr. and Mrs. Roger Scarberry. 809 and a half 30th Street described their hair-raising experiences, which began in the TNT area. The 2 couples were riding in a car, and as the auto crested the hill, an object loomed in front of them. The object, was in the form of a man, about 6 feet tall with wings on his back. Becoming frightened, the couples drove away as they approached a traffic circle near Route 62. They said the thing loomed in front of their car again. Mallet 20 said.
Do Mary hire some justice for fuck's sake?
Jesus fuck. No. Where did I leave off? This thing has actually 2 articles in here. Or 2.
I know, but you have to like remember what it was like to read a newspaper.
Yeah, tiresome.
And how they formatted
just sing the shit
it on the fucking,
horribly and
page.
Oh man, actually I take it back. It's like 3 because it's got these like this little sub article. Where I leave off.
Oh, let's just talk about the cakewalk coming up soon.
Yeah. Mallet 20s, they drove toward Point Pleasant on Route 62. Shit. Route 62 at 100 miles an hour with the strange creature drifting along behind the car. It keeps going off in either direction.
I like how these people narked themselves out that they were speeding too.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if like traffic tickets showed up at their addresses.
Yeah, right. Bills in the mail. Sucker. The couple said the thing seemed to avoid lights. When they turned into the C.C. Lewis farm, the creature was again in front of the car. What appeared to be a large dead dog was lying on the road. Later, the couples and police returned to the farm, but the dog had vanished. Deputy Sheriff Millard Halstead searched the TNT area. The deputy said the thing was gone, but he found a strange pile of dust. Scarberry 18 said, "Believe me, if you ever saw it, you'd be a believer." The men said they might go looking.
I know what I saw.
I smell bullshit for the thing tonight, but it indicated they were afraid they might find it.
All right. So that is an authentic newspaper clipping. From
Yes, always.
the Point Pleasant newspaper, written by Mary.
And
Thank God it was all done already.
well,
some of it. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
that would have been expensive.
And if anyone here can appreciate the authentic experience here at MoKuest, it's Ray.
Yeah. What happened to John Keel? Of course, he made some more books. There was a movie made about
Yeah.
starring Richard Gere and the most Democrat of Democrats. What's the chick from Will and Grace?
Oh,
Deborah Messing comes out. Laura Linney, who from Congo, if you've all seen Congo.
You mean one of the best movies ever made? Yes, I've
Yes,
seen
yes,
Congo.
that one. Tim Curry, we all know. Let me see. The people of Point Pleasant, mind you, no other sightings happen in the particular town. But what do they have now to commemorate the deaths of 46 to 47 people from the Silver Bridge? But a Mothman Festival, the creature who killed everybody.
Yeah.
So I was going to give some facts about the Mothman Festival if you're ever so inclined to go to Point
In
Pleasant.
the area.
The Mothman Festival is an annual gathering that commemorates the mysterious visit of the Mothman in the 1960s and is a great event for all ages. It is held annually in downtown Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and features live music, merchandise from various vendors, food trucks, cosplay speakers, and of course, you. That's pretty good.
Wow.
Just FYI, that the festival is held every third weekend in September. This September 18th through 19th. Usually, that's the 2021 dates. But 17th or 18th for this year. So hopefully this episode will be out before September. You can make your plans to go visit Point Pleasant, West Virginia to go to this festival. You know why? Because the festival is free, everyone. You can go and just walk in and say hello to the metal fucking Mothman that they have there, as opposed to a monument to all the dead people there. That's
Rub
fine.
it for luck. Yep.
Do
exactly.
they do that? I haven't seen the picture of the Mothman that they have there, but do they have all the names of the dead underneath it?
On a plaque under it?
Yeah. I tried to prevent the deaths
Not
of.
There you go.
Just-
And no one listened.
It was the only way.
Daniel, do you have any more thoughts about this book? I mean, it's a pretty short read. It's a pretty quick read. Again, it's mainly different accounts. Light on Mothman necessarily, and a lot on Men in Black, UFO encounters. And this hits all the points in the typical UFO lore. Lost time,
UFO,
abduction,
if you will.
Pretty much every close encounter of the third, fourth kind. Yes.
Yes. Ray.
What
continue.
other UFO characteristics are there? I just said lost times.
There's the
we said-
electrical
Occurrent like disturbances.
right
Yeah,
for equipment malfunction.
Yeah, that did happen. Also like phone
always
mysterious phone calls.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if there was any like sort of a supernatural type of poltergeist. There's nothing like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
even though Keel talked to Art Bell about how there was reports of like poltergeist activity around the events of the Point Pleasant incident, but
Do you think
I don't remember any of that
Being in the book.
in the book. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So once again, it would have been cool to have like more of those eyewitness accounts of and experiences of high strangeness hitting this fucking tome.
Right.
Like,
But maybe that was the case for him, like spreading out some of these books, because like I don't know what the next books, a few books are about, but maybe that was him bringing some of that information. Because I mean, why make one giant book that sells when you can make many that can sell multiple copies?
That does.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was a businessman too. So
I mean, he was in the. I mean, that's not too far fetched of an idea, considering how he was basically a freelance writer to begin with before he got into, and he was just going around, hop in his car, drive 1,000 miles for some strange report for a random publication, so maybe that freelance spirit never got out of his system, where he's like, I need to keep pumping out content.
And, it's funny because like I know in the book he says like it's like 1,000 miles or something from New York to Point Pleasant, and he just acts like he just casually got in the car.
And he just like, and I was there like next afternoon, like it was just it is wild. He's just like, oh, as soon as I got back to New York, I'd get some messages about stuff going on in Point Pleasant, so I'd hop back in my car and go. And I was like, dude, I've driven 1,000 miles. It sucks.
Was gas like 5 cents this whole time? Probably.
Right.
Oh, if that expensive, like fuck. You probably,
and I mean, cars probably weren't that expensive back then either. I imagine.
No.
Right. He only had an apartment in New York, but this is
like the cost of a movie ticket and a popcorn or some shit. You know how it goes.
Rental prices just went stupid.
Yeah.
So he was probably paying like $70 a month in rent, and then
he pays it all in nickels and pennies.
As he talks about his phone bill experience, be like $200 in a phone bill.
Oh yeah, right, because all these fucking long distance phone calls.
Yep.
there was a documentary about the Mothman and like the festival that occurs, and I mean they pretty much embrace the whole Roswell, New Mexico kind of model. You know, like there's museums, there's festivals, there's every store on the corner has something to do with the Mothman. I think I mentioned to talking to Bryce that at that point you would think that it's just a novelty thing for everyone. That I don't know if anyone that goes to these festivals believe that the Mothman
Right.
even actually exists.
How dare you
Or even the whole Roswell incident, like
besmirch the dead peoples
happened? Who
of
knows?
Point Pleasant and their legacy.
they have a fucking metal Mothman in place of like people fucking who
Obviously,
died on
they
the
have a
Silver
sense of
Bridge.
humor, you know.
Or what
Yeah.
if it's just their take on what an angel looks like?
It's just the most
It's a
gruesome looking thing.
biblically accurate
Go.
depiction of an angel. How
They
dare
have,
you?
They have dark skin with red eyes, and you know the MIB characters that they
Well,
described in
angels
here
get
all
rabies,
had like
I don't know.
Oriental features.
Yeah.
No, jeez, yeah.
They were pale skin with Oriental features, and
Right.
the only thing I can think of is
What does
The
that mean?
eyes, yeah.
The eyes?
they're very
No.
Asian characters, you know.
But one thing that was kind of cool thinking about the descriptions of the MIB is that all their clothing was like they were basically anachronisms, and the vehicles they were driving were also anachronisms. Like, but
The-
I was thinking about Black Eyed Kids having the same kind of
Oh.
shit attributed to them as well. So
Did you? I don't
Yeah,
know,
as
remember.
far as how like they dressed and stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember this from the book, Daniel, but I thought this was funny that the Men in Black characters were driving a particular type of car, but then like John Keel was like, I guess, outing the fact that these strange cars were coming, so they drove different cars after that.
yeah,
Mm.
I'm just like, what? So it gets around that John Keel's like outing them the kind of cars that they have, so they go and get like a whole new model of car
Yeah.
to fucking
Right.
drive around in, so they don't look entirely suspicious.
Time for the new hotness, guys. Rid of that old
But now the
busted
fact
shit.
that they're walking around in all this like black attire, looking like really alien type, because I mean they're obviously not from around here, like you said. Like everybody knows everybody in that town, and you can spot particular
Right.
cars.
Is that a fitted
characters.
suit?
Well,
they're ill-fitted suits.
Ill-fitted
but they are
suits, yeah.
fitted.
Yeah.
But I mean, the book opens up with
I
the fact
remember
that
now.
like John Keel is walking around in the rain looking for a
yeah,
phone.
he was the devil of the back roads or whatever he called
Yeah.
himself. Yeah.
because they
Because that's not what a hero would call themselves, obviously.
Well, because a
Duh.
guy in a suit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
bearded was such a weird thing to see. So
Yeah.
there's he never followed up on it, but I thought
But
it was
just the way he was dressed. He's a tall guy. He has a beard. And
Yeah.
it's dark. It's rainy, and he's a
Basically, it's
stranger.
how myths start.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yeah, that's how they.
But that
people
with
shit
that
themselves.
opening, I feel that kind
Or
of
get shot.
set the tone for the book, where you can't really take into account someone's. You can't really you can't really validate too much someone's account or take it as fact
Yeah.
because they already have a biases in their own head.
yeah.
Sure.
Because they're attributing this weird character that they've never seen before as like a devil figure walking around town
Mhm.
when it's just some
Mhm.
guy who wants to use a phone.
He's
his tires fucked
fucking
up.
lost and needs to use her fucking phone.
Yeah. So there's a rumor going around already. That's how you said the myth start. So what is it that someone saw that looked like the Mothman was just a big bird, and then everyone just saw that big bird and everyone accounted that was the Mothman?
Yeah.
Who
So
knows?
getting into back into kind of the idea of mass
The mass
hysteria.
hysteria.
Yeah. So I guess it's
And
open
it-
to interpretation about how you
yeah,
wanna, like,
and
take
it is
any of these
fascinating
accounts.
how in the Point Pleasant area, like basically you just had that 13-month span where Mothman activity was popping off, and not before or since, as far as we know.
Mhm. Well, do you have any final thoughts?
Mm,
about
If
the-
you've got an afternoon or two free and want to check this out, I'd say read it. It is interesting.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's other works that are written around the same time, like stuff from Jacques Vallée that's more fleshed out in terms of the theory behind the phenomenon going on, and maybe Keel's other works, which I'd like to get into at some point, but it's not going to be anytime fucking soon. I got a whole list of crazy I'm trying to get through already, but maybe some of these ideas get further articulated in other books that would then, when going back and thinking in the context of what he wrote in the Mothman Prophecies, makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't suggest this as a jumping off point into getting into the strange for folks, despite how popular this book is.
Right.
Like, I just don't think it's a
could watch the movie, I guess. And
super solid jumping off point into like whether you're interested in flying cryptids or UFOs or Men in Black. I think there's other folks that do a better job of this than this just, menagerie that he basically constructed.
There's a lot of cool beginner introductions to most North American cryptids on Reddit that you can find quite a bit. Fun stuff. Nothing. You're not going to learn a whole lot. It's just a lot of same things. But yeah, it's a good.
I would imagine if anyone
resource.
has any current accounts on a Mothman, it's basically the same.
Yeah.
I saw red eyes. They chased me.
Mm-hmm.
They flew away.
Yeah. But and John Keel brings this up, and talking to Art Bell about how, folks will see the same sort of phenomenon and think it's new when it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of like when you start getting into reading stuff on the paranormal or whatever, it's kind of another, this is case 372 of the same sort of thing that's being reported.
Day
which is
700.
fine, because that's just because, let's assuming that these are real accounts, then it's like, okay, the behavior is very set for these things. It's just where and when is it popping off is interesting. More interesting about it, particularly if you can tie it to a disaster, like with the Silver Bridge, all this stuff culminated in this bridge collapsing, and then that's it. Is there more of this going on that's where the dots haven't been connected necessarily? In that Art Bell episode, there's apparently a flying bird or a big flying creature associated with the 9/11 disaster.
Yeah. Well, I read somewhere that someone mentioned that like someone saw like a winged creature around the towers before they fell. So I mean, there's that too.
Yeah, and so,
but let's just get it out there is that a lot of people said they saw like a fucking devil head in the smoke and shit like that. So I mean, there was a lot of things that people saw within that.
Well, you could also
tragedy.
fold up a $20 bill or whatever and see the towers collapsing. Like, like
they knew beforehand.
It's all been planned.
We'll get into that whenever we get into that David Icke book too.
Oh, fuck yeah. And it's such a good book. Like, it's just fascinating, and I can totally see how people would argue that Icke is anti-Semitic, but no, like because of what the links he draws or whatever. But if you actually read his book, and he sits there and says outright, he's like, I'm not anti-Semitic. It's just these are the patterns that are like coming up. Like he's like,
and see, like he's said that multiple times.
Where the research has led me.
Wow. That's basically it. Like
funny,
these are the points that he's found whenever he's doing research, and
it is. It's always the fault of the Jews. What was that? What is there to say?
And George Bush, right? Let's be real.
Boy Bush, as he calls him. But that's a whole other egg of craziness to crack.
Right.
But what pisses me off is that there's folks that just read people bitching about David Icke, calling him anti-Semitic. They never read his books.
Right.
And they're just reading these reports saying he's anti-Semitic. So they just don't even engage the work.
Don't look
itself.
at the works that he's making.
And it's just it's got that, just that deflection shield already thrown up.
Right.
Well, just like I brought up earlier regarding this particular book, that the way he just like whenever it says, "Oh, they had black skin, but they weren't like this," or they have Oriental features. I mean, I don't think John Keel is a bigot or a racist or anything. That's just the way the terminology
that's just the
they used
nomenclature
at the time,
of the fucking South.
Yeah.
You know, like they ain't from
right.
around
If
here.
it quacks like a duck, it's Hitler. Gotcha. Hitler duck.
Well, I will give a recommendation for this book as well. It is an entertaining book. It is a quick read if you want just kind of to dip your toe into the, I guess, the conspiracy or the myth of the Mothman and some other extra UFO lore as well.
And remember, despite whatever he says, he's totally making himself out to be a hero in this fucking book. Like, it's the hero. There's no question in my mind about it. You know,
when this book was published, he was listening to David Bowie's "Hero" on repeat, right, with that 8-track in his cassette or in his car or whatever.
All right.
But yeah, so that'll be it for us. The Valley Strange. We'll be having more episodes coming out. Again, we're going to be talking about the movie, The Mothman Prophecies, at some point, and we'll do a kind of a comparison between the book and the movie. What was real, or what was that they take from the book?
I've been holding off to watch watching Mothman Prophecies because
I've seen it a few times.
Yeah,
well,
me too.
as far as the movie is
Not a long
concerned,
time,
if you didn't know anything about this book as a standalone movie,
fine.
it would be a good,
fine.
pretty decent movie. But since you've read this, you're already going to go in with the critical mind of dissecting. Well, that was from the book. Maybe that was
speaks the bullshits.
Well, I mean, I'm also the
Richard Gere
sick kind of person that, you know, I get mad at myself when I've watched a movie and then found out it was a book after the fact.
Yeah.
Because I'm the kind of the dude who's like, I like to read the book before checking out the flick.
Well, I mean, I just want you to hold on to the thought, Daniel, that you said, like, he says he's not a hero, but he is until you watch that movie, and then you see all the heroic things he fucking does.
Yeah, because you know that, you know, John Keel had to fucking, you know, give his stamp of approval on the fucking flick, you know.
The historical documents of that is the movie Mothman Prophecies.
Honestly, I would have loved to have seen John Keel in the screening of that movie with a huge smile on his face as Richard Gere is representing him on the big screen.
No, actually, that would have been brilliant. You know, if there were like any like older folks that John Keel talked to in his investigations, and then he plays that like like farmer husband or miner husband dude as he's being interviewed by Richard Gere.
Maybe
has a pretty good cast in the movie, so we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. But I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Books of the Strange of the Mothman Prophecies. You know, usually our Books of the Strange go on for hours on end.
Yeah.
But we're trying to we're trying to get a little bit more concise here with our discussions here. We don't want to tell you the whole book because we want you to go read it. So go read John Keel's Mothman. I mean, if you can get a free copy of it by any chance, do that too, or a used copy. John Keel's dead. He doesn't need the money. So.
No, he's fine. It's going straight to the CIA.
And as I normally do in every episode, we forget to introduce everyone. Again, my name is Ray. I'm here with Daniel and Roland.
Yes.
And we are talking about the Mothman Prophecies, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
Blue midgets come into my house. Hey, it's ridiculous. The guy who had some kind of a rectal probe. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Ridiculous.